Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. It's been a long time, it seems, since we were able to have this chat. A lot has happened, and I'll just briefly talk a little bit about what's been happening over the last couple of months. We've had a state election here in which we decided to join camps with another political party, a new political party called Real Change SA, and it didn't turn out as we would have hoped. I don't think it turned out anywhere near like they would have hoped either, but at least we tried. So it was our effort because we weren't prepared to spend anything on this particular campaign, so we chose to join with somebody else. And it just didn't work out as we would like. So you could kind of say another opportunity kind of missed, I guess, there. But what we'd like you to do is, firstly, if this is an opportunity to have a conversation with me about issues that are concerning you, please do so. I'll answer whatever questions that I can while I'm here. We've also had some issues within the party which have taken up a lot of our time, and hopefully they're kind of past, perhaps. But we're back on track. I guess that's the important thing. But one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was that an article came out in the Conversation just yesterday, which caught my eye. And it was really about this notion that the child protection system needs urgent reform. Well, it's kind of telling us something that we've always known. None of us who work within the child protection system, and particularly parents and children that are involved with it, will all be aware that the child protection system desperately needs to be reformed and changed. And here we are with a group of academics. I know some of them. I know particularly Bob Lonnie, who was the president of the Australian Association of Social Workers, a social worker obviously, who has been working in the area of research around child protection for many, many years, and a whole host of other academics who've contributed to this article. The article is basically telling us something that we've known forever. And the question I'm asking is that academics are telling us that the system needs to change, but actually who's listening to that? Now, here in South Australia, we have a new minister, and I don't know whether she's listening or implementing any changes whatsoever within the department. We haven't seen or heard of any significant changes at this particular point, but to be fair, it's only been a few weeks. So we will be waiting with bated breath to find out whether or not there have been any significant changes. Probably not. They always declare that they will be making changes, but regretfully, that doesn't seem to happen. So I just wanted to highlight some of this article, and maybe some of the things that are said in this article may resonate with you. And the question we're asking as an organisation that's interested in improving outcomes for kids is, what changes do you think would be significant that would make a difference to you, your children, kids that are in care, and even those that have left care? Now, I should have started by saying this. We've been very busy this month because this is Care Experience Month worldwide, and we here in South Australia have been pretty involved with that. And if you go to our webpage, our Facebook page, our YouTube page, you'll find some interesting videos. One that I did on trauma, and others that have been made by other people around those people that have been in care and what their experiences have been like. And we must remember that the care experience extends throughout a person's life, not just when they're children. When their children is traumatic, but when they leave care, they carry that trauma with them and can be quite devastating in terms of the way they conduct their lives and the relationships that they have. And so go to our Facebook page, you'll find some of those links, and to a YouTube page, and you'll find some of them there as well. Now, just in relation to this article, I'll just bring it up. The crisis in child welfare in Australia has for too long resulted in too many children taken into care, with many not receiving the timely assistance and care they and their families need. Now, I don't need to tell most of you that that is the case, that there are lots of families out there who really didn't need to have their kids taken from them. There could have been some form of early intervention that would have prevented that from happening. Yet the department, in terms of dealing with their sense of risk aversion, trying to avoid the worst possible scenario, they would just choose to remove a child without due consideration to working with the family. I was only speaking to a woman this afternoon, or I had a session with a woman this afternoon actually, who clearly is right on top of all of her issues, and yet the department refused to give back her son. And had they worked with her initially, I'm sure the child should not have been removed. So they traumatised not just the child, but other siblings and also, of course, the parent. So how could they be working differently is the real question that's being posed here. And how do you work with families that are in need? They're easily identified. We know that they're usually people with mental health problems, low socioeconomic background, drug and alcohol issues, where there's family violence, where there's homelessness. So we know what the issues are. We know that these are the families that are at risk. So why is it that we as a society don't seem to want to care specifically for them? So, they do mention Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders 11 times more likely to be taken into care. That itself is a catastrophe. Children from cultural diverse families and children and parents with disabilities also overrepresented in the system. We know that's for sure. Children offer enter child protection assistance for many reasons, including neglect because of poverty. Families need support to care for children safely rather than having their children removed. Now, just remember, folks, that this is an academic. These are a group of academics who are saying this. They've done the research. They have been working in this area for many, many years. The need for child welfare services has gone up by the current workforce, but the current workforce is ill-equipped and able to respond. And just on that matter, we also know that the current workforce just lack experience. The people that have been working in child protection for quite some time usually get burnt out. They don't get the support they need by the department and by their managers, so they choose to leave. So the people with experience and the qualifications go, and the people that are left behind, I don't want to offend young people because there are some smart young people there who can do the work, but they're inexperienced people primarily who don't understand the work that is required and perhaps in most cases don't have the ability to be able to work with families. They don't have the skill set that is required to do that, nor the experience and knowledge. And as a result of that, some of the decisions, or a lot of the decisions they make, are inappropriate and unhelpful. Reform is urgently needed to reshape the system and its workforce towards more services to prevent problems emerging in the first place, rather than a system geared towards removal. Such reforms would support children to remain safely with their families. And there's no doubt that that's kind of like a key issue with regard to all of this, that's for sure. And they go on to talk a little bit more about the approach that they're doing. So this is a group of people, academics, who are doing the research in this particular area, well-renowned, so they know what they're talking about. But the question I'm always asking is who is listening to anything that they have to say. It fascinates me that, when it came to COVID, we're all busy listening to the experts, the professors and health experts around what it is we should be doing about COVID. But when it comes to child protection, no one either seems to care about kids, or they don't see it as an urgent enough issue or a health issue, given the way kids are traumatised, the mental health issues that result from all of that. But they don't seem to care too much about all of that. Yet if it was a pandemic, which we could argue to some extent the child protection system is, no one seems to care or take the appropriate response or listen to what the experts in this particular case are saying. So the study examines broad-ranging publicly available data to investigate emerging trends, issues and needs in the child welfare workforce and the educational profile of the workforce. Then they go on to talk a little bit about what that's all about. The national framework, which I think is an absolute waste of space. Um, so they want to talk about envision a system where services and key stakeholders such as teachers, health workers, community service workers are funded to work together with children and families to reduce vulnerability and prevent child abuse and neglect. And the research has also identified ways we can invest in supporting parents to address early issues that might otherwise become a child protection concern. So the focus primarily on a lot of these things is around early intervention. And the reality is that we still fail to provide services for the most vulnerable people in our community, not just children, but their parents. And we do that because they don't matter. We certainly do it around kids because kids don't vote. So they're not going to determine who's going to be in Parliament to be able to advocate for them. So that's why organisations like us, Child Protection Party and other organisations are there to help to advocate for kids so that we can ensure that they have the outcome that they deserve. And they go on to say here, even when someone notifies a state child protection authority about child safety, they and their families don't always get the help they need. Safety concerns keep on being raised. Removal of children may be necessary in some instances, but removal often does not ensure the safety and well-being of children. And I think that's a fabulous point. We know that when kids are removed, that they're traumatised by that event. So even if their families are terrible families, lots of violence and drug use and so on, they still have an attachment to their parents. And so to be removed from their parents under those circumstances is extremely traumatic for them. And then we see instances over and over again where they're removed further and further away from other family members, such as siblings. And as a result of that, the siblings with whom they often have a strong connection often don't get to see each other for sometimes years, and that they move. So as they become more and more, the children become more and more entrenched in the system, the contact with their parents becomes further and further apart as well. So the whole system is designed to separate what the department sees as bad parents away from their children, as opposed to seeing parents as having certain issues that can be resolved and working with the parents so that they can find ways to find solutions to the problems which may have caused the department to become involved in the first place. So we need to, in other words, what this article is basically saying, we need to change our mentality about how we view the problem in the first place and the solutions that we believe are going to rectify that problem. So they go on to say, to achieve this goal, workforce reform is needed. The workforce for the preventative and supportive services in the child protection system is poorly defined and resourced. Many of these workers, teachers, early childhood educators, nurses, GPs, do not have qualifications or skills needed to recognise and assess risk of harm and provide needed support. And the reason why this is important is because they're the ones that do the notification primarily. So you might have your neighbour or somebody else might, but it isn't until a nurse or a doctor or someone like that becomes, or a teacher in particular, becomes involved. So that a teacher, for example, might see that a kid comes to school dirty or might have a bruise on that child's face without bothering inquiring as to what's happening, see if we can provide services for the parents and for the child. They just make a report and they come in, and then so if there's a number of those reports, then the department's like to step in and remove the child. Whereas the teacher or the doctor or the nurse has an opportunity to find out ways by which they could work with these families so that they didn't need to make a notification. So one of the issues that I think is important too is that we address the notification process so that there isn't this knee-jerk reaction to all notifications and consequently children being removed. And I think that's primarily what this article is trying to tell us. So they go through a whole range of findings. We won't go through that. And they talk about diversifying the workforce. The workers in job positions are overloaded, yet still must deal with complex situations. I just need to say, though, that sometimes the situations aren't all that complex. I hate the word complex. I've often said that before. Complex often means that whoever's saying it knows more than you do. what makes the situation complex. Mental health and other issues are not all that complex if you can find appropriate therapeutic methods to work with people. So what makes the complexity is the fact that there aren't services available for people to confront or deal with the issues that have caused the children to be removed in the first place, or at least caused issues which has created a notification. If a house is untidy and if kids are unkept, then, the solution to that problem is not all that complex. You just get somebody in there to do the tidying up, work with the parents, do some mentoring perhaps, and that situation can be easily rectified. So it's not all that complex at all. Those that are in the child, so it goes on to say, those that are in the child protection system tend not to be in leadership roles and less likely to be decision makers. And this is, it's quite interesting that this article covers a lot of stuff that we've talked about over the last 7 years. The people that make decisions often don't have anything to do with the kids. I was with someone recently and they told me that every time they ask a question, that the social worker says, I can't answer that, I have to go to my supervisor, and gets a response from them. And then I asked the person, I said, do they come back with an answer? I said, no, they never do. So they use it as an excuse not to make a decision because they haven't the authority, apparently, to be able to do so. And I wonder how different that system would be. It would be that the social worker you're working with actually made the decisions about what was in your best interest because they know you, supposedly, not always, rarely, but they know you better than most other people. So why can't they have the authority to make the decision? Well, probably because they're about 26, 27-year-old who hasn't got much experience anyway and doesn't have a senior role. So just finally, investment priorities must shift. Funding needs to be aimed at preventative and supportive services for vulnerable children and their families rather than the part of the system that deals with removals. Now, that is the understatement of the year because if we're going to fund this system, we need to fund it that prevents the problem or at least identifies the problem and then finds a way to deal with it as opposed to funding a problem after the solution has been presented, which is removing the child. So as you can see, there's plenty of things that need to change within the system. We've got a few people that have joined us, and I do thank you. Thanks, Karen, for coming on board. Thanks, Alex. It's good to see all these people again. I do apologise that we haven't been doing much of this lately, but we have been kind of preoccupied with other stuff. And Karen's right, return the children back into the parents' care. The children shouldn't have been taken in the first place on false allegations. I know, Karen, with your case, that is true. And I know that you and your partner would have been wonderful carers for your two boys. And then access is cut to once a month. We know that. And isn't it interesting how they do this no matter where you live, no matter whether it be here in South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, whatever, the solution always seems to be the same. It's almost like they have the same manual. And so they do tend to remove kids according to that manual. And a long time for court to make final decisions. That's true. And kids re-traumatised while they're pushed to detach the child, which they do. Karishma says, my son asked his worker last week to see his brothers. He was told it isn't a good time. When is a good time and why wasn't it? That's a good point. Why wasn't it a good time? Absolutely horrible. And it's so true. And they don't have rational reasons for any of this. The most common reason is that the child is traumatised. Well, the kid's been removed from his family. They're traumatised anyway. You're traumatising them even more. Why wouldn't you look for solutions that don't traumatise them? To maintain those connections with family and siblings would be a really good start, I would have thought. But no, they don't. Right, and so I agree, but there aren't parents who have done the right thing and change in every way. And that's true. I guess there are parents who haven't. There are adults who just should not be parents. It's just that simple. So, look, folks, thanks for being with me. It's good to be back with you. This week alone, I've had a whole host of people that have contacted me in relation to issues around child protection. I've helped out as best I can. When I finish here, I've got to go and make a couple of phone calls around that. But if you need any help from us, please contact us at admin@childprotection.party, and we will certainly get back to you or contact one of the numbers on our Facebook page. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being with me. Take care. Look after yourselves. Look after your kids and be safe.